everyone, Helen here. How are you doing? I hope you're okay, and I hope you're going to enjoy just spending a little bit of time in my company today while I chatter on to you about various things today. It's not so much a sharing of my usual knitting, crochet, sewing projects today, but I have got one finished project to tell you about, and mostly I'm going to be updating you on my 100-day project. So this podcast is nearly all about leaves, but one or two other things as well. So, and in case you haven't joined me before, I live in Durham, which is in the northeast of England, and I am a piano teacher. Part of the time I work at home, teaching mostly children, any age from 3 upwards, because I have just got a new little pupil who is 3, which is great fun. And the rest of my time I spend, well, basically making things or going out for walks, spending time out in nature. So yeah, that's me. So today I'm actually going to tell you about something I did recently as well, to start off with, and then I'll update you on my 100-day project. And yeah, so sit back and relax. So I had a lovely time last weekend. I signed up to do a workshop that was called Connecting with Birds, and I had to get up incredibly early for a Sunday, that is. Not particularly early really, but the course started at 6:30 a.m. because we were connecting with birds. Then obviously a good time to do that is when it's dawn and we have the dawn chorus, especially at this time of the year, when the birds are in such great song. So I had to be there at 6:30, and there weren't many of us on the course. I think there was about 6 of us there, and it was nearly all outdoors. So we began by sitting in a little semicircle outside, looking down into the valley that's near us, and we just sat in silence, each with a cup of hot chocolate, which was really nice, and we just had to listen and absorb all the sounds around us. And that was a really lovely start. And then we wandered down into the middle of the woods, further down in the valley, and spent a bit of time there just listening. And then we started to kind of home in on some of the different bird song that we could hear, and try to identify what we thought we were hearing. And so that was all really, really lovely and calming, and it was just so nice. Weather wasn't particularly good. It was very grey. It kept drizzling, but we'd all gone appropriately dressed, lots of layers, and there were blankets provided when we were sitting still. So that was fine. We all gathered for a hot breakfast around a campfire, which was really, really nice. And I don't know, it's really lovely to just sit outside, especially that early hour. Very, very, very peaceful. And then a little bit later on, it lasted about 4 hours, this workshop, and we did have a little bit of time inside in a wooden cabin, and learnt a bit more specifically about the birds that we can see and hear at this time of the year in this area, and about their behaviour and habitats and things like that. So that was interesting too. But I think the thing I got most out of it was just that kind of just connection with the environment that I live in, and it was like a bit of nature therapy. So I went home feeling really, really calm and peaceful. I also smelt of wood smoke, so that was, a side effect of sitting by the fire. But no, it was really, really lovely. And a couple of days after that, my husband pointed out an article in one of his magazines which was all about a similar thing. It was about forest bathing. I don't know if you've heard of that. It's a thing that really was, I think it started in Japan, and in fact, forest bathing is something that has been prescribed by Japanese doctors since the 1980s, apparently, according to this article anyway. And so forest bathing is just basically spending time in woods, in amongst trees. But the difference between doing that and just going for a walk is that you're actually paying attention. You're there with an intention to connect with your surroundings and home in on all of the little details that might be there, just not just what you can see, but what you can smell and hear and what you can feel. So yeah, a really sensuous experience. If that's the right word. Using all of your senses. So yeah, and I mean they've done quite a bit of research on this this kind of therapy, and they found that participants in this particular research that they did, after 30 minutes a day of spending time in amongst trees, found that they had a lower pulse rate, lower blood pressure, and lower levels of the stress hormone cortisol. So they were really, really noticeable effects. And but they also found in other research projects that you can get pretty much the same effects from just having house plants in your house and spending time with them and maybe noticing them and, you know, just looking at them, or even looking at photos of trees, you know, for a certain length of time can have the same sort of effects. And also even handling wood. So again, another connection to the trees around us, but without having to go out. But obviously the loveliest thing to be able to do is to go in amongst the trees and just notice. Well, you know, if you've watched many of my podcasts, you'll know I'm always talking about noticing the little things. And yeah, so this is just sort of backed up by this Japanese research. So very interesting. And yeah, and I came across, just after I'd read this article, I came across a lovely poem by a poet that I follow on Instagram called Samantha Reynolds. She has an Instagram account called @BentLily. And she writes the most beautiful poems, sometimes very short, sometimes, you know, fairly long. But she has a fantastic way with words. And yeah, so I just noticed a lovely poem this week that she had posted on Instagram. I'll just read it for you. It's just a really short one. It's called The Paradox of Less. Slow down and see how rich you feel as each day reveals millions of moments, tiny, gorgeous and wild. A really, really lovely little poem there. It says a lot in a few words. And sometimes when I'm out and about, I am inspired to write a poem. So I'm not a poet, and I don't ever sit down and think, right, I'm going to write a poem. But just occasionally I'm inspired. Words come to me usually while I'm out and about. And I really, really love poetry anyway. And some of you, small number of you, might have watched my series of podcasts called Gentle Words, which I made in the earlier part of last year, 2021. Just little 5-minute podcasts where I'm reading a few poems around a particular theme and accompanied by a bit of video that sort of fits with the poems. And occasionally I slipped in a poem of mine, and I thought you might like to hear one of them now, because this was one that I wrote when I was wandering through the woods, and starting to notice that some of the trees really look like they've got faces on them. And I really, really love this. I felt that they were all friendly faces and that I liked walking amongst them, that the trees were my friends. And so I wrote this poem. So here's my poem called The Faces in the Trees.
The more I look, the more I see the faces in the trees. The more I amble slowly through, the more I feel at ease. The more I pay attention to the crinkles and the folds, the different shades of brown there are, the crevices and holes. The more I see them peering out with time-worn kindly faces, the more I feel their watchful warmth in sheltered woodland places. And here a mouth, and there a nose, and there 2 friendly eyes, watching me as I walk by beneath the pale blue skies. I walk at peace, without a care, caressed by nature's art. The more I look, the more I see their gentle inner heart.
Yeah, so I hope you enjoyed my little poem, all about my friendly trees. And something else that you might enjoy if you haven't already discovered it, I discovered this lovely series of audio podcasts from watching Ali on This Little Wonderful Life podcast. And it's a series of podcasts by the nature writer and author Melissa Harrison. It's called The Stubborn Light of Things. And she made these audio podcasts in the first lockdown in 2020. Well, she started making them then and did them for a few months of that year. And her intention was to give us all a bit of a connection with nature when we were all feeling shut away in our homes and for quite a while only allowed to go out once a day. And they are the most delightful and calming podcasts that you could wish for. And she just takes you for a walk and she talks about all of the things that she can see and hear around her. And yeah, I can highly recommend them. She has also now brought out a book called The Stubborn Light of Things, which I assume is a written version of the audio podcasts. But I also discovered on sort of investigating Melissa Harrison a bit more that she'd written a couple of children's books. And so I'm going to actually give you a book recommendation now. This is called By Ash, Oak and Thorn. And it is intended for children. So it is a book that children, who are reasonably good at reading, can read for themselves. Once you're reading books with chapters in them, you'll be fine reading this. But honestly, it appeals to me as an adult just as much as it would to any child. And it's partly because I love that kind of the fantasy, imaginative side of nature as well. Imagining, lots of you'll know, I'm always imagining things living in the woods that are not real things. Anyway, so this story is about 3 little people who are called Moss, Burnet and Cumulus, and they just have a really great adventure. So it's a really it's a kind of book that you just want to keep reading and find out what happens next. But also it has some really, really great positive messages in it, not just about caring for the environment, but also about how we behave to one another as well. So absolutely brilliant for children, but I'm sure that any adult would, who likes a bit of nature and a little bit of fantasy, would love that too. So that's my book recommendation today. Yeah. So okay, so before I update you on my 100-day project. I just have one finished project to share with you, which if you've been very observant, you'll see that I'm sitting on it. Yes, it's my dune blanket is finished now. This was a free pattern by Lucia Vatic 24, and I'm using the Harbour Blanket colour pack, Stylecraft Special DK, but I decided that I didn't want to do the actual Harbour Blanket pattern. I wanted to do another dune blanket because I made a dune blanket in the actual colours that were in the pattern. But I just love this selection of colours. I love the shell stitch pattern, and there it is finished. I took it out on a walk, as you'll see, with me to take some photos of it, and yeah, I just love it. I've done it as a square, as you might be able to tell. I don't know if you can tell in the photos. I've done it as a square rather than a long single bed blanket. And my other dune blanket is a square one as well. And yeah, and so it all went fine, apart from there is one section which has a mistake in it. I'm quite conscientious about sewing in my ends, and so every few stripes, I don't know, every 6 to 8 stripes, I sew in the ends. So I'd done this and came back to my blanket another day and started doing my stripes. And after, I think it was 7 stripes, I realised I'd started from the wrong end or wrong side of the blanket. And so there's a little section in the middle of this blanket where you can see where it's mostly the one side of the shell stitch, and this little section you can see the back stitch, but really there's not much difference. I don't think anybody will notice while they're busy using the blanket, only if you go looking. So I haven't even taken a photo to show you of that bit. I don't think you would really notice it. I can notice it, but I've decided, yeah, perfectly imperfect is the way to go. So yeah, so one nice finished project, and I've decided I'm not going to start a new crochet project yet, because I have got languishing in a box is my knitted mitered square leftover sock yarn blanket that I haven't touched for several months, maybe a year. I don't know when I last worked on it, but it's sitting there just, I can't even say half finished. So I've decided to get back to that and see if I can actually finish that maybe before I start another crochet blanket. So 100-day project now. So the last time I showed you any of the leaves, I'd got up to day 13. So that's quite a lot of catching up to do. So I'm going to try really hard not to talk in great detail about each leaf. Otherwise we'll be here all day. And so I'm just going to show you, a photo of each one and chat through and just tell you something briefly about each one, as brief as I can possibly manage. So we'll start with the day 14 leaf. And this one, for this one, I just got together some little scraps of fabric and did some slow stitching. Day 15, I was feeling like so many others that I wanted to acknowledge what was going on in the Ukraine, and so I made this leaf of blue and yellow felt and embroidered the peace symbol of holding hands in the middle of that. For day 16, I did a bit of needle felting, so I just found some wool roving in a box that I've got and just kind of moulded it into a leaf shape. And for day 17, this is proper patchwork now. Well, it's English paper piecing, so it's all done by hand, and again using some scraps of fabric. And for day 18, I did some knitting. I'd wanted to do a colourwork leaf so that you could have a different colour to show the veins in the leaf. and I couldn't find a pattern anywhere at all, so I wrote my own little pattern. Day 19's leaf, just made from paper, and you might recognise that the colours are the colours of the harbour blanket, and it was just a leaflet that came with the yarn pack, and I cut it into the shape of a leaf, and it looked quite effective. Day 20, I went back to my childhood and did some wax rubbing. I did a few wax rubbings of leaves, and I chose one of them for my day 20 leaf. For day 21, again, another thing that I hadn't really done since I was a child, and that was some wax relief painting. So I drew the leaf in white crayon and then painted over the top so that you could see the shape of the leaf, and then cut it out. Day 22 is a woven leaf. I just bent some pipe cleaners into the shape of a leaf and then wove around the leaf shape with some yarn. Day 23, I did a bit of doodling, so just on paper I drew a leaf shape and then just decided to get out my coloured felt tip pens and do some patterns on the leaf. It's a really nice thing to do. Day 24 is using some hand-dyed felt. I embroidered with blanket stitch around the edge and some running stitch in the middle. Day 25, when I'd been looking for some old sheet music to make into a leaf, remember that there's quite a lot of music, pieces of music called simply album leaf. And so I had this one by Grieg called Album Leaf, and I thought I just had to make that into a leaf, because it's a leaf and it's some music, piano music, and it's a piece that I like to play as well. The day 26 leaf is just a bit of paper collage, so I quite often tear pages out of magazines and group them together in colours, so I just used some of the greens and yellows to create this little collage. For day 27, I used some little white feathers as a collage and tried to arrange the feathers so they were in the direction of the veins of a leaf. But I really, really love these little white feathers. I love seeing them. I can't help myself picking them up off the ground when I'm out for a walk. So I have quite a collection of them. For day 28, I made a little leaf-shaped book. And I think this came about because I was busy looking at quotes about leaves and expressions, and I started thinking about this expression to take a leaf out of my book. I thought, oh, I could make a little book in the shape of a leaf. So I'm very pleased with that one. 29, I had been scrolling through Instagram, and one of the other people taking part in the 100-day project wrote a little bit underneath about leaves, because I think the painting that day had made her think of leaves. And she wrote some really lovely words, and one of the things that she said was that leaves come into contact with so many other creatures and things. So that's why I did a drawing of a leaf covered in insects. For day 30, I used some brown card and just drew the leaf with a white Posca pen. I love the effect of that pen. And I tried a few different patterns first before I decided upon one for my day 30 leaf. Day 31's leaf came about because when I was out on a walk, sitting on a bench next to one of my favourite trees, I was really looking at it and noticed there was a little hole part way up that looked a little bit like a doorway. And I started imagining what kind of little creatures might be living inside there. Well, fantasy ones, not real ones. And that gave me the idea of a leaf sprite. So that's why I made this little character here. And I really feel like he might need to have some friends. So you'll watch this space. There might be some more leaf sprites on the way. For day 32, I used paper again and did some drawing. I divided the leaf into some little shapes and coloured them with coloured pencils. Again, that was another thing that I liked doing as a child, was just filling in a space with lots of lines and then colouring in the shapes that you make. And then the last one I'm going to show you today is for day 33, and because that coincided with St Patrick's Day, I decided just to crochet a clover leaf or a shamrock. So that's the reason for the day 33 leaf. So to finish off with today, I'm just going to take you outside and just really have a focus on leaves. And these are all leaves that are around in my environment at the moment. And yeah, just a short little video appreciating the simple but beautiful leaf. Okay, well, I'm going to say my goodbyes now and wish you a peaceful and busy time, taking care of yourself, maybe spending a bit of time appreciating trees or greenery or houseplants or things made of wood. And yeah, I will see you again very soon. Okay then, bye.